Hello guys and welcome or welcome back. My name is Liza McCarthy. I'm a digital artist and illustrator. Subscribe to my channel and we're about to start the video. So in today's video I want to talk about ways to improve and enhance your art, and these are some of my personal tips and tricks that I thought you would find useful since they really helped me, and little goes a long way. So the first tip I have is to embrace the ugly phase of art. So this means ugly phase of your art is basically, usually for me, it's the sketching. So this is a beautiful sketch, so try not to look at this. But if you are on my Instagram and follow me there and you just happen to see my time lapses, the first sketch is always gonna be monstrous, hideous. It's never perfect. And at first I was really bothered by this and completely in resentment of my art. I tried to pressure and create more beautiful sketches, or why can't my sketches look as those other illustrators that have them perfect the first time they draw? And truth is, it's because of practice, and I try not to stress out because the ugly phase happens with every artist. Probably everyone has an ugly face, whether it's the coloring flat colors phase or whether it's with the line art or you're sketching, doesn't matter, but ugly phase happens. And I really do recommend to just embrace it, to not force yourself and not stress too much, go with the flow and just try correcting your sketch or whatever your ugly face is with every layer you go. And do not force and pressure yourself into creating better sketches or neater quality or something like that, because sketches are sketches and they're practice and they're something your hand draws, and just try to work on them and not stress a lot, because stress doesn't benefit anybody. It won't benefit you. It'll just make you more stressed and more prone to hating your art. So I really recommend to just love your art and try and go with the flow. And I have found out personally that if I focus too much on the sketch and make them too intense or try to correct the ugly face, what happens usually is the finished product doesn't match my internal kind of vision of this illustration that I wanted to have. It doesn't match what I wanted it to be. And that's something you have to keep in mind, to not force and focus on your sketches intensely, because sketches are sketches and they're the first kind of layer and the first kind of work, and something that basically will be defined and refined over and over again. So that is something you have to keep in mind. Another note I have to give is that this is the first time my first time trying to make lineless art, kind of without line art, and it looked fine. It looks fine, I guess. I did notice some mistakes that I did, and which is kind of, you'll see further in the video. I've made a lot of mistakes with actually not having line art, and I was doing all this based on a sketch, so that was a mistake. So that's why all my colorings and all my flat colors look kind of off. I've made other further mistakes with the way I positioned the sketch under, and it's not really helpful. It would have been helpful to have it, in front of my flat colors. But this is my first time trying, and the more I practice, the better I get, and you'll see that soon with your own art. The second tip I have is to try out different brushes. Especially textured ones, if you really like texture like I do and you prefer to have book illustrations that are quite texture and they're filled with textures and beautiful, the sketchy style, and sort of have the beautiful hair and shadow and lightning, all that. So basically play with your brushes. And do not pressure yourself to make a full-blown illustration using some brushes. Try to doodle something, try to color in something, and try to see what works for you and what doesn't. I do recommend, this is what I personally did sometimes, is to ask your favorite illustrators of what brushes they use. Either DM them or just comment on their post and they would make sure to respond. Or if it's a Q&A, that would have been better. And I do ask them just even though I have the brushes that I use and I have right now my preference as my favorite brushes, I still ask them around because I want to try what they prefer. Sometimes these brushes are paid for, and in that case they're not really expensive, so I would try and get them to experiment with them. Or I just try to either create my own brush, kind of matching the aesthetic of the brushes that they use, which is quite hard, I would say. I'm not really professional at brush making or anything like that. Or I try to find other textured brushes or smooth brushes alternatives, or basically free alternatives that they do use or anybody else uses, and kind of play around with that. Third tip I have, which of course I have gone through this and I've tried this tip and it works completely, which is to get a Patreon course of your favorite illustrator. So Patreon is a subscription platform where you pay a monthly fee to get access to all those kind of bonus sketches and kind of time lapses and courses and stuff like that, basically like tutorials of your favorite artists. So basically they're gonna show you their process and behind the scenes process that they do, and maybe sometimes it's blog posts and stuff, and I have tried this and this is really beneficial. I have tried MediArt's Patreon. It was amazing. It was totally worth it. She explained a lot about the way she colors things in, and to this day, her tips actually help me. And when I'm feeling a little motivated, I could just remember what she told me and go back to the material I had there and kind of try and do things in her style when I'm feeling low in motivation and kind of struggling with my art style a bit, which is quite helpful to have courses of that sort. Or I'd really recommend perhaps watching YouTube tutorials of how to draw. So if you're struggling with drawing hands or drawing feet or drawing anatomy, basically the human body of a woman or a man, anything like that, right? You can just, search it on YouTube and follow the tutorial completely. Or you could just watch sketch sessions of artists, and that really helps me because I have learned how to analyze their style. I have learned how to analyze their movement and what they do and how they kind of tend to create out of shapes and blocks and all that, how they create a composition out of it, how they create an artwork out of it. And I really like to watch sketch sessions. The long ones especially are the best because I could really focus on what they're doing and just see that. And sometimes I would bring, and most of the times, not sometimes, I would be lying if I'd be saying that happens sometimes. Most of the time I actually get my sketchbook, and I sketch with them. Whatever they're sketching, I'm sketching in my style or in their style, whatever it is. I just like to sketch and practice a lot. Another tip that I have is quite a tip that goes long term, and you will see the results long term. Truly, they completely kind of work over time. They're not really something that's short term based. They're something that will help you along the way. So that is basically to kind of practice every day. Yeah, you heard that right. The truth is, the only way to improve is to practice every day and trying to observe from your natural environment and drawing different objects and different people, or trying to use photo as references and drawing. And I do not recommend tracing. Here is why. I think a lot of beginner artists, I was a beginner artist once, and I assumed that tracing, right, other artists' artworks would help me. I would not post their artwork because I had no rights to it. It's their artwork. But I would sketch and I would feel like, oh, right. So it's kind of like I trace the artwork. I know where the nose position is going to be. I know where the eyes are going to be. And when I try to draw something resembling the traced artwork I did, it did not work. So the truth is, when we trace, we cannot remember the movements, or we cannot remember the position of things, and it just kind of sets your art backwards. Personally, that's what happened for me. So I cannot stress enough, I do not recommend tracing. I recommend actually practicing a lot, actually pushing yourself through, no matter whether you like your art or don't. Just try and try and try. And if you compare my art from December 2021 to right now, December of 2022, it is completely, you wouldn't recognize my art style. You wouldn't recognize that I have done that. You know, it's a huge difference. It's beautiful. It's my new art is completely, I would say right now, because I'm feeling really, really positive, I feel like it's flawless. To me, it looks so beautiful. I never felt so confident in my style or in my art ability ever since I've looked at my progress. And when I'm feeling really demotivated, I would just look at my old art and compare it to the recent art, and I'd be feeling so motivated. So that's a really good tip. And I do recommend to go out of your comfort zone and sketch things and draw things you have never done before. Like, my uncomfortable zone is definitely animals, vehicles, or backgrounds, landscapes, anything like that. I would practice it. I still do it and it looks really ugly. I don't share it, but I do it to gain confidence, get to know my art better, get to be better at my art, and be really confident and try new things out, which you can go wrong with it. So do not feel the pressure as if you have to share all your illustrations out there on the gram or on YouTube. Do not feel that pressure. You just practicing and doing it for the sake of practicing. That's a very helpful tip, I would say. I also, another tip I have is to have a sketchbook, which isn't going to be like a digital sketchbook. Don't do that. In my personal experience, sketching in a traditional notebook, right? It's so much harder than sketching on an iPad. And usually is because we don't have such helpful tools like Lasso tool or Liquify or the noise tool, or an easy accessible eraser, and you could basically draw anything you want in layers. You don't have that. So this just makes your art process 10 times harder, and this is very, very helpful. I do that. So the harder it is, the more progress you see, and kind of all your movements and all your strokes, brush strokes, have to be calculated. That's the thing. You have to build it yourself on basically one layer of that sketch paper. So it's very helpful to have a sketchbook and practice. And I don't share my sketchbook. And especially if you're a beginner artist, or you're completely unconfident in your ability of creating art, I do recommend having the cheapest notebook. I have as a sketchbook, I used a lined notebook. It's kind of the same one I use for school, but a smaller size, and that's how I draw. Or a bullet journal if that's accessible to you. So, or a sketchbook that's cheap enough, because I couldn't find good paper sketchbooks, and I just prefer to use something much cheaper and much portable. So that's sort of thing. And if I would get better at art, I would obviously have a much more kind of motivation, and I would invest in a sketchbook that I would like Illo or a Hoo, something like that. Any of the brands that I really like or would want to try out, I would invest in them, but I just don't feel the right time. I don't feel like I could do it right now, because I feel the pressure of starting or drawing in expensive materials or drawing with expensive materials. So just start with a pencil and a cheap notebook, and that will go a long way through. Another tip I have is having anatomy practices. So you know how some artists post sketch with me anatomy practice sketches, like a sketch session, a really long sketch sessions. Join them and or watch them and sketch with them, along with them. Everything they do, you do that. That really, really benefited me in my art, and I've had more confidence in my drawings. A few more tips I have. One of the tips is to join DTIYS challenges, which are draw this in your style challenges. So an artist, like you could see on the screen, is a beautiful DTIYS, and I joined it. So basically it's when you have an illustration as a reference with the color palette and everything already made, and all you have to do is basically just follow through and kind of draw whatever you see, but draw this in your own style, which is it was really challenging for me when you didn't have your own style. That would be really challenging, I would say. But now that I have my own style, it's very easy. I know the eyes I make, the eyes I draw, the nose I draw, everything. I know the shape of the ears I draw. I know the way I draw flowy hair and all that. So that's kind of the tip I have. Another thing I have to say is you should work on your line art. Try working on your line art, because we all know, right? Line art is very hard, and it can't get easier, obviously. But the more you practice, the better you get, the more kind of confident you are in your style. And line art is very important because it kind of teaches us to be patient with our art, that it's okay to make mistakes and then you kind of like undo, that it's okay to kind of have messy lines, and we analyze that we have, kind of on straight lines, and we kind of fix that. So line art is something that's very hard for me. For anyone, I would think line art is hard, because if you look at the beautiful sketch and then the line art that you draw with those shaky lines, yeah, that's when you see, and that's when you know that you're challenging yourself. It's extremely important to practice your line art and gain confidence in it, to be kind of aware and really focus on it. This is my personal tip, is to have a layer of highlights. So on top of all your digital art, I would create a layer of highlights. This is where I add the kind of sparkle or the pop to the art, and to also add your watermark, which is important. So because I had an experience where my art got kind of stolen and reposted without credit, and nobody likes that. So have a watermark on your art, and this shouldn't be in the bottom corner where it can be easily cut from the screenshot. It should be something like on your art, like on the sweater of this artwork that I did, or on the hair. Something that can't be cut or easily removed is something that's you should really think about. If you don't do that, I really recommend, because it's really not a good feeling when somebody steals your artwork and claims it as their own, or just posts it randomly. So that shouldn't be you shouldn't be making it easier for them to steal your art. So just put your watermark on there, and this is a very good tip. I learned from a friend of mine, an artist, so this is a very good tip to do. And basically, these are all the tips that I have for you. These are all the kind of tricks I've found out to work for myself, and I hope you liked the video. So put a thumbs up for me, and check out my Instagram and other social media down in the description. And I'll see you in the next video.